Court documents say the actor Alec Baldwin was handed a loaded gun. He was told it was safe, but pulling the trigger led to the death of a crew member on set. Tonight, tributes are being paid.
Beyond the extremely talented, which is a given, is just her generous and really open personality.
Also tonight, Boris Johnson says vaccines are the way out of the pandemic, but scientists say they're not enough. Labour says government's help for families in the budget is just evidence their cuts have gone too far. And Beth Mead becomes the first woman to score a hat-trick for England.
I think it's got to be up there. I think to score a hat-trick at Wembley playing for your country is probably one of the proudest moments for me and my family.
This is ITV News with Gamal Fahnbulleh.
Good evening. Court documents have revealed the actor Alec Baldwin was told the gun he'd been handed for a film scene was not loaded. But minutes later, it fired a live round, killing a crew member and wounding the director. Now out of hospital, the film's director has paid tribute to cinematographer Halyna Hutchins as a friend and a colleague who had pushed him to be better. Tonight, as the investigation continues, the dramatic 911 call from the set has been released. Robert Moore reports from the scene in New Mexico.
We are learning more about the circumstances of the tragedy on the film set here, even if the central mystery of how it was allowed to happen remains. Police believe that Alec Baldwin, seen here distraught in the hours after the shooting, was told by a member of the film crew that the gun he was handling was cold. In other words, was not loaded and did not pose a threat. And yet, minutes later, the talented young cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was shot dead. Audio has been released of the emergency call. An assistant on the film set pleading for help.
Bonanza Creek Ranch has had 2 people accidentally shot on a movie set by a prop gun. We need help immediately.
So was it loaded with a real bullet or one?
I cannot tell you that.
Okay. Is there any serious bleeding?
I don't know. I ran out of the building.
Also injured in the accident was the director Joel Souza. He has spoken for the first time, saying, "I am gutted by the loss of my friend and colleague Halyna. She was kind, vibrant, incredibly talented, fought for every inch, and always pushed me to be better. My thoughts are with her family at this most difficult time." Other friends have paid tribute to the Ukrainian-born cinematographer who filmed herself on horseback earlier in the week.
Beyond the extremely talented, which is a given, is just her generous and really open personality.
Vehicles continue to come and go inside the ranch where the tragedy unfolded. I am told the investigation will last at least several more days, and the film industry also is trying to learn important lessons. Alec Baldwin, photographed here hours before the shooting in his period costume and ironically with theatrical blood on his body, has been fully cooperating with investigators. Many who work in the industry say the problem was not a single blunder, but rather multiple failures, ones that raise serious questions for the film business. Robert Moore, ITV News, in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
The Prime Minister is insisting tonight that vaccines are the way through the winter, despite growing disagreements from scientists who say it won't be enough. One of the government's own top advisors said today that a Christmas lockdown may be on the cards if there isn't an immediate return to widespread social distancing and working from home. Mark Mallet has more.
Almost 12 months on from when the COVID vaccination programme started, and the government's focus is, well, once again on vaccinations. Boris Johnson insisting that's what will get the UK through the winter. But the World Health Organization is warning that vaccine alone will not be able to lift the world out of the pandemic. And many leading scientists here in the UK now want the government to activate its winter COVID Plan B, bringing about a return to working from home and the mandatory use of face masks.
It's a modern triumph that we've managed to produce so many highly effective vaccines in such a short time scale. It's absolutely remarkable. But alone, they're not good enough. You know, the vaccines need to be combined with other measures. I think, you know, if we don't get ourselves back into a situation with lower numbers of cases in the community, I think we're going to be in big trouble.
There were nearly 45,000 new coronavirus cases reported today, the 11th consecutive day that cases have been above 40,000. A further 135 people have died with the virus. This vaccination centre in the Wirral is one of many delivering the vaccine booster programme, designed to top up immunity for those most at risk. It also remains open to anyone who hasn't yet received or come forward for their first or second dose. And a one-dose vaccine programme is also now underway for all 12 to 15-year-olds.
12 months ago, we were all talking about older people, vulnerable people. Now it is the unvaccinated younger people who are becoming the vulnerable people.
A number of local directors of public health in England plan to deviate from government guidance and introduce some tighter restrictions in the coming months. This episode, where scientists say one thing and government does another, is likely to lead to further confusion. And it certainly won't help a health service that's on course for one of its most challenging winters ever. Mark Mallet, ITV News.
The Treasury today revealed a number of measures to be announced in the budget on Wednesday, including £500 million for hubs to support families. Labour were quick to point out they don't sound too different from Sure Start centres, hundreds of which have been closed by Tory-led governments. Our political correspondent Harry Horton reports.
This week, the government wants to put money behind its belief that the first 1,000 days of a child's life are some of the most important. £500 million will be spent on 75 family hubs, offering support and advice for new parents on everything from breastfeeding to mental health. One former minister and early years funding champion says the hubs will make a huge difference.
To give every baby the chance at the best start for life is really transformational for our society. And then I think the critical laser intervention is offering birth registration in family hubs. I think if we do that, then everybody, you know, whoever they are, wherever they come from, will go to a family hub to register their baby's birth. It's an opportunity to show them what other services are available, what other help they can get.
Family hubs will operate in a similar way to Sure Start children's centres. Labour says the new hubs won't make up for the hundreds of centres closed by the coalition government.
I think it's a tacit admission that the closure of Sure Start centres was a mistake. This, of course, doesn't come close to replacing the network of Sure Start and children's centres that we've lost.
The investment is part of a raft of spending announcements in next week's budget. £3 billion on apprenticeships and skills training, £850 million for museums and galleries, and almost £7 billion invested in regional transport schemes. Northern leaders have welcomed the transport money, but worry it could mean bigger projects such as high-speed rail could be scaled back.
The problem is that without the full delivery of HS2 building from the north, starting from Leeds down to Sheffield, without Northern Powerhouse Rail and a new station in Bradford, the north of England will be shortchanged. What we'll see is levelling down rather than levelling up.
The Chancellor wants to use his budget to get the government's agenda back on track. But after the pandemic, money is tight and some sectors could end up with less than they hoped for.
And Harry is with me now. Harry, these are giveaways that the government is happy to discuss ahead of Wednesday, but in every budget there is always also take.
Yeah, that's right. Splashing the cash is very popular. And I think the government pleased to put some money behind some of the big rhetoric we've heard from them recently. But you've got to pay for this somehow. And of course, the public finances are in a pretty dire state after the pandemic. So the Chancellor, broadly speaking, has got two options. One is he can raise taxes. The other is he can cut spending elsewhere. Both those things aren't very popular. Now, we'll get more details on that part of the budget on Wednesday. And I think it's within that context that we'll be able to properly judge how significant these spending announcements are. OK, Harry, thank you. And we will bring you the budgets live here on ITV on Wednesday in a special programme presented by Tom Bradby.
The cost of living has been rising. We've already had a slew of tax rises. Our national borrowing has been eye-watering. So just what can we expect this Wednesday as the Chancellor talks us through his budget? I'll have live coverage of the statement and I'll be joined by our team of editors to make sense of what it means for you and the country. Do join me for the Chancellor's budget from 12:15 on Wednesday on ITV.
Well, in other news today, Labour has urged the government to immediately remove VAT from soaring household energy bills. They say cutting VAT on domestic energy from 5% to 0% should remain in place for 6 months to help with the record gas and electricity prices expected through the winter. The AA says petrol prices are nearing a record high this weekend, partly because retailers are raising them to subsidise the even higher cost of diesel. The AA says based on its wholesale cost right now, petrol should be about 2.5 pence cheaper per litre. And NASA has announced it will launch an unmanned flight around the moon in February. It'll pave the way for American astronauts to return to the moon by the end of the decade. Finally, there have been friendlies before, but tonight Wembley played host to its first ever competitive Women's International. Northern Ireland impressed by holding England to a scoreless draw in the first half of their World Cup qualifier. But then Beth Mead came off the bench and did something else Wembley has never seen before. Chris Scudder reports.
Two nations, one anthem and a shared dream of making the next World Cup finals. England had put 6th past Northern Ireland in a friendly earlier this year, but this time they came up against a green wall and a charmed Irish goal. England's need was Beth Mead, and a double substitution did the trick. No sooner had Mead come on, 20 seconds later she broke Northern Ireland's resistance.
Quite brilliantly done!
Once the first went in, the floodgates opened, and this time it was the other sub, Beth England. Having kept them at bay for an hour, Northern Ireland was swept away by the English tide, and Mead scored another beauty.
Brilliant for England! They are pouring now, the Lionesses!
3 all in a row. But she nor they were done, and Mead bagged her third, all within 15 minutes of coming off the subs bench.
For Beth Mead!
It's just an amazing feeling. It's an honour to put the shirt on and score for this country, but to score a hat-trick at Wembley playing for your country is probably one of the proudest moments for me and my family.
An historic night for the women's game, marked by the first ever women's hat-trick at Wembley. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
That's it. Many thanks indeed for watching. For now, good night.